be bribery, right?
Okay, while you're standing, let's bring the meeting to order. It's, I don't know what time it is, 6:46 or so.
Go to count for negative 40.
And I'd like everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from our regular meeting, August 16th, 2016. And before I take any comments on that, I just want to commend the person who's taking our minutes, our new scribe. She's really improved the quality of our minutes from what we had before. So first I want to say thank you. And then for tonight's meeting, I'd like to ask people who make a motion in second, would you mind saying your name? Because she's actually going to do the minutes for us by listening to our tape this evening and watching it. And it just might be a little helpful if we could put that in and make her life a little easier.
So I can no longer mumble. Okay.
Prefer that you don't this evening, Jeff.
So
May I have a motion to approve?
Jeff Blumenthal, I move to approve the minutes of August 16, 2016.
Linda Schofield, I'll second that.
Okay, is there any changes to the minutes or any adjustments?
No, I looked through them and didn't see.
That's terrific.
Yeah, amazing.
So all those in favor of approving as is?
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved unanimously.
And I know we have had some discussion back and forth about is this more detail than we need? But I actually like this level of detail because, yes, you can go back and watch everything on SCTV, but, if there's some quick thing I'm trying to remember, I don't want to spend an hour and a half watching an SCTV show when I can just, page through and scan minutes when they're this good. So
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is great.
Right, exactly.
Good. Okay. Next item on the agenda was we wanted to talk about the 2017 regular meeting schedule. We have to set our meeting in advance for next year so that they become regular meetings. And as you know, the consequence of not doing that means you're holding special meetings, and there are different notice requirements and also some restrictions on what can be included. You can't talk about anything not on the agenda. You can't bring up any new items on a special meeting. So it's very important that we do our best job to get our meeting scheduled correctly. And I raised the issue, and I think we all have, of conservation coming in at 7:30, and at least in budget time in particular, it cutting some of our meetings shorter, at least us feeling pressure to cut them short and maybe not having the full discussion that's needed at that point in time. Although Maura's not here to speak for herself, I know she doesn't like long meetings, but there is an occasion when they're needed. And so why don't I ask Sean, would you report on what you were able to find about us on keeping the same night and maybe keeping this room? What are the options?
Sure, yeah, we explored this in the last, did look at a few other nights, particularly Monday nights, to see if that might be a possibility, but with planning and zoning, also televised meetings, the room really just isn't available. We have looked at possibility, the Board of Ed conference room is available on the third Tuesdays. And it's possible, while we're the televised, it's easier for SCTV to film us in this room. It's much easier on the setup, the wires, and we've all been upstairs. So one possibility would be to ask if Conservation Commission would be willing. Now, they actually did already file their, it's actually pretty early, but they filed their 2017 meetings. Apparently, they've historically been the first and third Tuesday for at least 30 years. But that's not to say that they are not televised, and it might be worth a request to them to see if they'd be willing to move to the Board of Ed conference room, at least on their third Tuesdays, meaning we would have no deadline at the end.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, we're double checking one last piece on that. All right, so that is something that I think is the best of some options.
Just on the, we only overlap one night out of two, right? So.
In terms of,
No,
of the two in a
Yes.
month?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's correct,
that's
right.
But
and I
they
did.
might like,
Right.
it's better than standing in the hall for 45 minutes
Sure.
waiting for us to
Right.
finish.
I did talk to our conservation officer also. He's very open to the possibility, if it looks like we're going to have a long meeting and I can warn him in advance, they could amend their agenda to move upstairs rather than even having to refile. Although on a regular basis, it's certainly cleaner if everyone just kind of understands where they're supposed to be. And they also, as far as as he said to me, have the option of taping to our door there, that they've moved upstairs even last minute, and under FOIA, that's still okay for legal posting, if they were to move their commission meeting up, even if it looked like we didn't think we were going to go long, but we were going long. So that's another option. But, I put it to the board, what you'd like to do.
So, just my comments, the perception of the public, when there's public, and they do get public audience, and they should, for their meeting, that has to stand out in the hall, and they're all talking, and our meeting isn't over, I think it doesn't look good.
Right.
When we're forcing them to move at the last minute, and we don't plan it ahead. So that's why I asked whether or not there'd be an option to just request that one day a month, they agree to go to the Board of Ed meeting, and we keep our meeting and schedule this, probably even just schedule it so we have the room till 8, so nobody else sneaks in our time, with no intention of using it. And then again, there might be the day we have to go after 8, but, at least if we schedule it for that, then we'd have this room available for a full amount. What do people think about that? The first selectman would like us to make a request for her, because she would have to, I guess, notify them that we'd like this room, and then to see if they'll reschedule.
We should request that. That's my
Okay.
view.
Can I get a motion to do that?
Mr. Pomeroy moves that we request the Board of Selectmen to move the Conservation Commission on the nights of our meetings to the Board of Education conference room.
Kevin Prowl, I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval. Okay.
Do we talk about these dates, or is our meeting targeted for the third Tuesday?
Yes.
All right, so
We were suggesting, are you looking at the, sorry, can you show me what you're looking at as the plan thing we want to do later?
This is something
It's
different.
related, but later in the agenda,
Yeah, okay.
actually.
Okay,
We'll get to
sorry,
talk about the whole
sorry,
plan
sorry.
schedule. But yes, what we just passed was that we stay on Tuesdays at the same time, third Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
Okay.
So these are supplemental meetings to be discussed later?
And some of these are overlapping with what we will be approving for
Okay.
17. But the
They're
way
the
this
plan
is,
meetings.
this assumes they're Tuesdays. If
All
we
right.
had changed to a different date, I would have to.
So just before we get off that, Barb, can you
Okay.
send an email the actual dates for
Definitely.
the regular scheduled meetings for 2017?
Sure, and just for clarification.
Are any of them moved because of holidays?
I believe, so just for clarification, we would typically file that with the town clerk in November, so.
November?
In November, and what we'll do now with this, assuming we're successful with the Conservation Commission in moving that second meeting, I will, for your October meeting, have a proposed full calendar, January through December, as we've done in years past, because that also has to say the date, time, and place.
Okay.
And then that'll be, but yes,
Okay.
we'll be operating on the assumption it's the
Thank you.
third Tuesday unless there's a holiday conflict or.
Thank you.
And we will have a published written calendar. Will we have it at the next meeting, do you think?
Yeah,
That's what
Okay.
you said.
I'm assuming if we can get a response from Conservation Commission before then, that we should. be
And
wrong.
I guess the request we had is, can we have a paper copy at that meeting?
Yes.
For those people that have old-fashioned calendars, and can we have an email copy for the advanced members of the board?
I will do both.
Wow, what's going on? We're not all, non-advanced just because we use paper calendars.
All right, this board would like it both ways.
We're retro.
All right, we got a few retros. Okay, anything else on that topic? Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of the 2016 supplemental budget appropriations. And just a reminder, and for anybody watching this on SCTV, during the budget cycle to relieve the need for increases, we identified a couple projects that we thought made sense to pay cash for this year, and we wanted to take them as supplemental appropriations, not bond for them, do them by paying cash and take them out of transfers. And we wanted to take care of those two items tonight, since we did it as part of the planning process. We could not do it before because we needed a request from the first selectman, and as you will see in your packets, we have a September 13th, 2016 letter from, I guess it's from Tom Cook. Nope, wrong one, sorry.
That's correct.
Yes, from Tom Cook to Sean Kimball, saying that these were approved at the Board of Selectmen, and they're requesting permission So we need to take action. Can I get a motion to approve these?
So moved. Linda Schofield.
Thanks.
Jeff Blumenthal, seconding that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Anybody else want to comment on them? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. The next item, I'm looking for volunteers. We had, in the past, a committee that is going to deal with, it's Culture Parks Recs Commission Special Revenue Fund Committee. In the past, the two members of it neither one is still serving on this board. And so what we'd like to do is we would like to get two new members. They want to reconstitute this board. I don't know if it has a specific goal that it's looking at, but Sean just left, but I've asked Sean to pull out the financial analysis to the extent it's available surrounding what was done the last time around. As people may recall, we actually ended up doing a budget transfer on an ongoing basis with a plan with them to help make them whole, to make it closer to balancing. And there's a lot of discussion around, what does the golf course fund and does it fund everything else? And there's a surtax charge that the golfers had been charged for a few years, and how has that been used and where is it? Well, the reality is, because it's a special revenue fund, if they didn't make extra money in the fund and the balance didn't go up, that money got spent by the department and it's gone for prior years. So we need to, as a committee, it's a special revenue fund, and in any given year, you close out the year. For prior years, they were closed to make them back down to zero. They were never closed to put some reserve aside for something that golfers had paid. So we need to have a committee relook at all of this and how are they doing it. And I've asked Sean, who's well into the analysis of making sure that whatever we get, we also look at the capital requirements. So he's taking a look back 10 years as to capital requirements at the golf course so that we can attribute the interest we're paying, the debt service, make sure that when we're looking at them, we have the full story. So we understand whether it's making money or not making money. I really don't know. And to the extent this may have been done, I think it's not been able to be found anywhere. So this time we'll make sure we do a full analysis. And on this committee, we'd like two members from the Board of Finance to serve. So I'm looking for volunteers this evening.
Well, I'd be willing to volunteer to do it.
Yeah, I will too.
Okay? And you guys are okay if those are our two representatives?
That's great.
Kevin Prell, I second that motion.
So the two volunteers for the record?
Rob Pomeroy.
And Linda Schofield.
Okay. Thank you. So we have our two appointees. That's great. Next item on the agenda is the Finance Director's Report.
All right. So in front of you actually is a slightly updated version. I added two short sections from what was emailed out last week.
All right, did you
So
send
there
it?
should be a paper version in front of you. If not, I have extra copies up here. All right. So I guess I'll start with some a nice piece of news here. We received, I guess, a couple weeks ago now. We received for the 17th year in a row the GFOA Excellence in Financial Reporting, Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is this nice award right here, and happens to be right over my shoulder. And as I say in the report here, this is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, recognizing governments that, quote, go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles to prepare comprehensive annual financial reports that evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosure. So again, we are quite honored to receive this award, and we hope to continue to do so for many years to come.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
So-
I'd just like to accolades to Sean for having us, being able to step in at the last minute and pull this off, because during the transition, there was a lot of things to do, and that's great. We still got it.
That is true. All right, so I don't have final transfers for you just yet for fiscal 16, but on the whole, I have here the revenue, as we have been discussing, we were targeting 1.2 to 1.5 million in some of our more recent reports of favorability. We, with all of the revenues booked and reclassed per some of our auditor requirements, we're about $1.55 million, so that is good news. I have some of the highlights here by department of some of the larger areas where we were favorable. And again, those are the ones that sum up to about 1.3 million of the 1.5, the others being other fees and charges that we collect throughout the year in different departments.
Sure, just for curiosity's
Sure.
sake, I mean, obviously, the tax department is collecting our property taxes.
Yeah.
The building department, I know, gets all sorts of fees from people who are trying to get a building permit.
Sure.
Board of Ed gets grants.
Yep.
Town clerk, marriage licenses, fishing licenses.
It's actually almost all conveyance tax.
Conveying, okay. I
So,
was like,
and this
I
year there
knew
was-
those marriages and
Yep.
fishing things weren't adding up to.
No, it was significantly over budget. I guess that means a lot of real estate transactions.
So the conveyance tax goes to them.
Feeds right
All
into that, so, yeah, so it was
And do you all
positive
know
news
what
there.
that is? Okay,
Isn't it 0.5%?
yeah.
That's right.
It was quite controversial a few years ago.
And then continuing with positive news here over on the expenditure side, again, I'm not ready for the final transfers as we're still sort of validating and shoring up some of the numbers, but with all of fiscal 16 booked, we're at $74,000 of budget favorability on the expenditure side. So again, positive news. I have a report here. This has already been shared with the Board of Selectmen, but kind of working through some of the departments that were over and under, and sort of the reasons why, and helpful to know as we plan next year's budget here before we know it.
And I had one comment on that, and that was, I know when we talked about the cost-saving report last month, Lisa pointed out that there was savings in the police area on overtime. So I was actually surprised to see that overtime exceeded budget. So I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, but.
Let me see. Well, it's down, well, it did exceed budget. It is down from where, the budgeted number is significantly down from what was budgeted
Yes.
previously.
No, I
So
get
there is
that,
year-over-year
but it just
savings.
was like,
We were maybe
okay.
overly optimistic in how much we were going to save.
celebrating last month, and now we're not.
Well, it still is, I mean, it still is hard dollar savings, but it is, yeah, maybe we were overly ambitious in how much we were going to save in that area. I do know that there were a few other unforeseen events, including an opportunity for a very significant training, an off-site training at the Hartford facility, where the whole department came out. And I know that does unfortunately have costs, but it was an excellent training opportunity for our police force.
Okay. And then I was curious about the open space tree work.
Yeah, these are, and I don't know if Lisa wants to comment more on this,
Parks, or-
but these, I talked to Jerry Toner about, a lot of these are in dangerous areas or near trails, and it's a public safety issue if you
Yep,
see a
okay.
large hanging branch or dead tree that needs to be removed.
I just wondered if it was some of those
it-
little bits and pieces near private
No.
property.
Trees and safety, public safety.
Yeah, these are issues that Jerry really has no choice but to go
Yep,
out
no,
and
I
address.
get it, that's fine.
And so, unfortunately, that does have a budget impact and may see an increase, at least in the request for next year in that item.
And every year, he's asked for more for tree trimming, but in order to keep private trees in. You have to estimate, and this was a year where he had to do it. For Kerma, yeah.
We have a lot of open space, too. It's a beautiful thing, but those trees don't live forever.
Right.
No, it's not a lot of money, but I guess I didn't realize that we pay increased fees for paying online. I knew for people who, if you pay by credit card, there's, I don't know what the add-on is, but you pay more.
Right.
And then I thought it was actually better to electronically have the money transferred from your bank account to our account.
There is still a small processing fee with the online pay. It actually has resulted in a fair amount of savings. We no longer have 2 full-time employees in the tax office. So it's one of those where, in that particular line item, it is up, but year over year, the full tax department budget has been virtually flat for a while now.
So it's helpful, that good.
It is helpful. In fact, we're staffing with part-time employees without benefits and other things. So we're seeing some savings in the benefits line and other places that you don't quite see it in that one. All right. And, all right, and then I added 2 points here. Linda, this was a response to your email that you had sent, I believe, through me earlier about, in response to the Moody's issue or comment report, just a couple questions there. I did have a chance to talk
So long ago, I
Bill
forget what they
Fazioli.
were.
Well, your questions were good ones, and it was specifically related to the net debt, direct debt to full value.
Oh,
It's
right.
kind of a mouthful.
Right.
And you had asked sort of what does that mean? That's one of those measures that Moody's uses. That's really, full value is the full, as it says here, basically appraised value of all property in your town. So not the assessed value, but the actual full market value. And so they just do calculations. Again, it's just to sort of figure out the ability for municipalities to raise funds is really what Moody's is looking at.
Is that just a simple gross up of the 70%? Or do they
Of the
actually
100%,
calculate?
they calculate on the full, yeah.
So they
full
just use
value that's in
100%
there.
instead of
Yeah,
70%.
100% instead of, exactly.
Okay.
And then there's a note there about the difference between fund balance and cash balance. Again, you'll see those cited in these reports, and in fact, I've also handed out, PFM does a nice, and we've handed these out before, they do a nice comparative to other Connecticut AAA towns. And some of those metrics are in here. I just received this yesterday, but I wanted to hand it out. We've gotten these before, but it's nice to have them as updated as possible. But you'll see some of these metrics, including fund balance, cash balance, and some of those other factors that are, again, just sort of measuring how liquid is the town, how able are we to respond to.
So can you define those two terms as they're used by these guys?
Sure, so a fund balance, basically, a fund balance includes modified accrual accounting, so that's everything that, receivables, anything else. Cash is really just a spot, that's what you have in the bank, essentially, cash at any one point. Everything else sort of accounts for known receivables or other liabilities that you have.
So,
Okay.
I thought that was interesting, because looking at this Moody's report, net cash as percent of general revenues, Avon had close to 40%,
For the group, can you tell them what page you're on?
Which 12?
page 12, which,
Happened to
not sure
open to
why
them.
you would have so much cash, liquid cash readily available.
Yeah.
But it appeared the median was around 20%.
That does seem high, like it's just sitting there.
Yeah,
doing everything.
didn't seem all that prudent, but I think, we're below the median by about 5-6%, which seemed, I thought, like a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, as you guys know, we had that investment policy that just a year ago where we started
Yeah.
trying to take advantage of reserves and make sure we earn something on them.
Yep.
So we have a laddered investment program on them right now.
But that counts as, everything in that counts as cash, right?
I believe so, right?
Yeah, I believe so, too.
Okay.
So, all right, and then the last piece, we had received some questions about what was going on with revaluation. Firm Municipal Valuation Services has been contracted with to perform the 2017 reval, and they are initiating field work, so you're starting to see, you may start to see some of them around town. They start, as the assessor explains to me, they do sort of drive-by looks to compare to what the assessor has on the database. That's kind of their first initial data gathering process, and then they'll be continuing throughout next year as they finalize the 2017 grand list. So just as a point to remember, that's the grand list that will affect that the mill rate for fiscal 19 will be based on the 17 grand list. So as we plan, not the budget we're about to plan, but the one after that will be the first one where we see the full reval numbers, whether it's flat, high, or low. Impact.
Right, so this is Kevin. I'd like to have who come in?
Dave Gardner is
And
our
have him
assessor.
come in and kind of give us an update to where he thinks we are? As to
So-
where the reeval's taking place?
It might be really early. So, two things. This is a mid-cycle. You know how there's a full reval and then a mid-cycle update? This is the mid-cycle. So they're not going into people's houses. It's not the full work that's done on the every 10-year basis that has to be done. So what they're essentially doing, I think, is reading all the data that exists in town, comparing what's out there with what they have. And I think the drive-bys are just to see if there's obvious updates or some major change that's visible from the road. They're not actually, it's not the full update. And because the reports aren't going to be back until, it doesn't affect next year's budget, it affects the following year's budget. So we're way early for him to, we can ask him, but I guarantee what he's going to say is, I don't have anything yet.
Right.
So what I think we need to do is maybe ask
Well, he
Sean.
can give us an idea of where the
Process and-
property values have moved. Shouldn't he be able to, or no? Because my understanding, and I'm just trying to looking forward, is that top-end home, the $1 million home, has come down significantly in value. And I'm looking to see how that's going to affect the 2019 budget. So when we're talking about numbers, we have an idea of what the possible implication of that might be.
So what he'll tell you is that, and we can ask him in to say this, but it doesn't affect the
budget.
grand list necessarily. Well, it doesn't affect the budget, right? Because, again, the grand list is what the grand list comes out at. And if higher-end homes are valued at less, then your question is, what's the lower-end home valued at? And we just take whatever that grand list is and do the math to the mill rate. And the taxes would be what they are to collect the same amount of tax. So basically what it does is it just shifts. It causes your mill rate to move rather than your taxes. Does that make sense?
Right.
It
Okay.
redistributes the grand list. It
Right.
doesn't.
Right.
Changes the size of the slices of the pie.
Correct.
So the question
Right.
is whether I guess Dave.
Knows anything yet.
Knows anything relative to, to how it might shift. In other words, well, people who had homes valued that had been valued between 700,000 and $1 million see a decline, whereas people with homes between 200,000 and 400,000 see an increase. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he has that level of sophisticated information. The local realtors probably would.
Well, having worked with Dave for a few years, I think he'll be disinclined to reach any
Yes,
conclusions,
yeah.
yes, and to guess. So if you want to talk to him on a one-on-one, I bet you can get his gut better than if we ask him here, but we can, if you'd like, hear what he has to say. He's just going to tell you, I don't have any information back from them yet, I believe. So if it's on this you know what I mean? If you want to just talk to him about what is his opinion on it, then we can invite him in to do that, but I don't know if he'll be able to give you any results that are as a result of the reval work that's been done so far.
I guess I was looking for his input as to what the effects are.
Yeah, I don't think he'll go there.
You don't think he'll go? Isn't that what he does? No?
Well, he does, he's going to do it based on empirical data. I don't think he wants to shoot from the hip. That's not his nature, and that's a good thing.
So can I invite, before we ask him here, and does anybody else feel strongly about asking him here, can I invite you to have a one-on-one
Sure.
conversation with him? Because he's a great guy, and I know he'll be happy to meet with you
All right.
and talk to you about him. I actually talked to him today. You can just stop by and talk to him. That's why I'm pretty sure he's not going to be ready to
Right.
tell us a whole lot. Just because there's not any facts yet to really give us. But why don't you talk to him, and if you think after talking to him it makes sense to ask us him, then let's bring that up, and you can even call me outside of this and we can get it as an agenda item.
So is there someone, is he the one that keeps track of the selling price of the homes? Is that, or who would keep track of the actual sales price of the homes?
That's one of the data points have you seen the assessment cards that are out when they do a transfer?
Yeah.
There's the sales prices on that.
Right.
And his department is the one that, records that stuff, so I would say,
He does?
yeah, I would
Okay.
say you're in the right spot.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Anything else on reval that people have questions? I think we're just not going to know anything for a while.
And that's actually all I have.
Okay, how about Board of Ed? Brooke?
I don't have any formal report. One of the data points that Barbara and Sean and I had talked about in advance of the agenda was there was an opening of school report this past week at the Board of Ed, and as a part of that, the Director of Personnel that tracks the enrollment side of things did an update, and I just have the 3 slides here from that report for you. This is preliminary because it's only September 1st. They'll do the formal October 1st enrollment report, but I know this was an area of interest. So it just
It just showed that we had we had projected to be down about 106 students, and we were down about 37 so far. Again, it'll get finalized for October 1st. So at the board's October meeting, they'll get that full report, and we'll obviously share that with you. And it showed some of the highlights that we had. Particular surge at Squadron Line of about 56 more students than projected there. Kindergarten of note was projected in total to be 234, and we saw an uptick to 265. So this is the first time that we've seen an in-migration trend in several years. So it doesn't make a trend, but it's the change. And so just wanted to bring that to your attention. We also had issues not only at Squadron, but at Tooten Hills and Latimer, where we had move-ins that pushed us over the class size guidelines and had to add a section at the end of the summer in 2 of those cases. So we will be...
Overall enrollment compared to last year, though, is still down.
Correct. Is down 37. It was projected to be down 106.
Did you have to add for the 3 sections any staff were able to accommodate?
Yes, those are 3 staff adds.
3.
That's why we're highlighting that.
3 full-time faculty.
Yes, certified staff. Yep. So it was a very unusual summer.
And for kindergarten, it's full-day kindergarten now, so interesting. So the per pupil expenditure will go down a bit, perhaps. I mean, the budget went up, but
it will impact that calculation, but we're always in arrears on that. So the audit of the 15-16 fiscal year will get finalized in December. So usually, right around budget time, you'll see the net current expenditure data, but it's always a year lagging.
And do we know how we compare to other towns in the Farmington Valley?
I only know anecdotally from the superintendent that it did not seem to be just a Simsbury thing. There seemed to be some other Hartford area superintendents that were also seeing more students than they had projected. I'm not saying it was a net increase, but similarly, that they were surprised by seeing numbers that were higher than they had.
I wonder if there's one town that's way down.
Yeah, because it's not like the population at large has gone up, so, I mean, where did all these kids materialize from?
Well, presumably, I can only infer that since it wasn't a change in the birth rate, that you have some in-migration of some people saying, hey, this is where we want to live, and people moving into these communities in this region, which I can't take anything but a positive from, personally.
Meaning somewhere else there was a decline.
Somewhere else there was a decline, and again, that was just sort of a Hartford area superintendent's meeting, so it was anecdotal from the probably 2 weeks ago. So all of the superintendents were kind of acknowledging, okay, this is how our school year started.
Right. We talked about this a little bit at the Long Range Planning Committee meeting, and we're guessing, quite frankly, but based on some feedback that as apartments have become available and more condos, that some of the older folks in Simsbury are moving into those alternate residential placements and opening up homes that have been purchased by young families. So we're seeing an influx of young families into newly vacated homes.
As opposed to moving into the apartments themselves.
Yeah, that was the supposition, which we don't have a lot of hard evidence, but.
Which is good that we're able to keep our seniors in town and the maintenance of a home and keep them in town. And I mean, I haven't looked at the studies in a while, but the Home Builders Association in Connecticut had done a study a number of years ago that showed that the average lifespan of a home more than paid for kids' education, that families that moved into town typically would be there before the kids started school quite often. I mean, as the case of maybe many of us, but I mean, we were here before the kids were born, and we're still here. after the kids are long gone. So their study anyway concluded that across the board that homes pay for themselves, even with the educational component, even though that's not the common
Right.
anecdotal type of, stories that we hear. So I think I'm happy to hear we have more housing for seniors and more young people too moving into town. Makes for a vibrant community.
And Rob, I would just add that anecdotally, I've heard from realtors, and you may have as well, that I don't want to say that there aren't any young families moving into apartments, because I'm hearing that some of those apartments are being occupied by young families.
What's going on with apartments, by the way, at the end of, the end of Northeast Utilities, but the end of Lincoln? Do we know? Anybody?
Well,
Being built.
there's structure that's up there.
They're building,
drive by
they
it.
built the clubhouse, they framed the clubhouse.
Oh, they did, okay, because it seemed like,
Finally underway. They've been spending a lot of time and a lot of money down there.
yeah, it seemed like it stopped for a while, okay.
That was all site prep work, I think.
Oh, it was, okay.
And I heard that the Hartford property, that north 40 acres, they want to put more apartments in there, which was not, I think, part of the original plan.
The plan,
So I'm not
interesting.
thrilled about that.
Wasn't aware of that.
Okay, we're in the middle of the Board of Ed report, so maybe we could get back
Yeah,
to,
sorry.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, in terms of our status, similar to what Sean said, we're still preparing for the auditors, doing some finalization. We will be asking at the education meeting for the non-lapsing account formalization of the year end, and then we would be coming to you at your October meeting to do that same two-part process. So my best estimate at this time is it's approximately 130,000 favorability in round numbers.
Okay, and I know we talked last week, could you
So that's
just,
the carry, sorry, I'm sorry, just,
That's
that's
the-
the carry forward. at the
Right,
end of the year.
and as we talked during the budget process, knowing that we had those revenue issues with the state, we talked about the plan of how to utilize existing non-lapsing, and this was the anticipated estimate for
so they'll be coming
the
to
new year.
us for permission to put that into the non-lapsing account
So that'll be October,
as soon as it's final, so that'll be for the next meeting.
right? Correct.
And then, as we also talked, can you just very briefly provide something on the case that everybody's
On
been
the CJF?
reading about? Yeah.
Right, I had forwarded you earlier on sort of a bulleted summary of just some of the initial observations from the judge's ruling. I think we've read as a follow-up that the state is going to be, the Attorney General is going to do an appeals process. I've not heard updates since that initial. I believe Lisa sent something out yesterday. I didn't have a chance to review that from CCM, but it's something that we're going to be constantly watching here at the state level. All of the associations that we belong to, whether it be CCM or the CASBO group that I am part of, or the Connecticut Association of Boards of Ed. It's going to be a topic of interest to try to figure out when and what is going to be the next possible outcome that we have to be prepared for. But as of now, it's really speculation, other than the fact that the legislature has a 180-day clock to start thinking, and I'm sure there's going to be some action, but I'm not sure what that will be.
So, just for anybody who might be listening, can you just share with them how much state aid Simsbry is getting from the state and versus your total budget? Because I think people will be surprised at the size.
Right.
It's not anywhere near what you would think it should be.
Yeah, the largest part of the favorability, as you see in Sean's report for 15-16 revenues, is the ECS education cost sharing. And so our total revenues were up about $274,000 to a total of $6 million for the town of Simsbry, and ultimately, the Board of Ed budget being around 67. million. It's a
So 6 million in ECS, are you including special ed money?
Not including the excess cost. This was, I believe, just our, I think this might capture a few smaller grants, but this is not IDEA federal special ed money. I don't believe that includes the excess cost either, because it would be
So
a
in
large amount.
round numbers, remind us what the special ed money might be.
I know that previously we were at right around 5.6 million. We actually got a little bit more ECS. Excess cost is close to 900,000. That's not part of this. That's not considered part of this same revenue.
Right. No, I was just in answer to Barb's question, so we're about
Right, 10%.
Seven, yeah, so
Right.
about 10% of the budget.
About 10%.
So that's just something to keep in mind as this all goes forward. Okay?
One of the things that I know, was discussed was, and we shared with our Board of Ed following their last meeting, was just a little bit of the background on the formula for ECS, and we just provided them with some information from the state website in terms of the factors that go into that. So as to who actually administers it and whether or not it's being followed, that's what I would assume this case they should be able to demonstrate that, are they being true to that formula.
Okay, I didn't think we'd want to spend a lot of time on it, but I thought it was worth at least mentioning so everybody's thinking about it. How about anything else from Board of Ed?
Not at this time.
Okay. The next,
Oh, did the work at the junior high this summer get done?
A lot of work got done within the district. The junior high school was actually a pretty small project this summer. So it was actually just about a $60,000 hallway and sprinkler line work to really finish the first phase of Henry James. And now we did receive confirmation this past week on the state we have a complete grant application for phase 2, we should be focusing on next summer.
In the field?
Turf field was able to open on time for the start of the school fall seasons, and appreciate again the support that you all gave with the budget process so that we could get that out to bid. That was definitely critical into having it done. We were just under the gun, and the way they were moving on to all of the other schools that wanted to open before school started, because this is a very tight window for these types of projects, and so we were very, very pleased. In fact, today we did a punch list walkthrough. We had some minor things that we're trying to get finished, but we were open for business and have had full use of that field since middle to end of August.
okay, anyone else?
Just one last one on Juncos tennis courts. Those are planned for.
They're beautiful.
We had some Henry James repairs that were of a different nature. They're not just a crack filling. They should last us for several more years by some time, so we have to do a more significant replacement. And now we're in the process, the new athletic director and myself, in the process of working with engineers to look at the high school replacement plan, and that's the one that's on the first year of the upcoming capital 6-year CIP.
Good. Okay, anybody else? Okay, good. Next item is the report of the Long Range Planning Committee. And I snuck this on here without asking the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee if it was all right if I do so, but they did meet this past week, and I thought it might be helpful just to give a quick update to this board as to what that group's done.
Yeah, just very briefly, where we are now is, we had a discussion about what the drivers are that could be affecting the budget over the budget and the revenue, both sides, expense and revenue, over the coming 5 years, so that we can, and Barb and I are going to be meeting with Sean in the next day or two. He's already started work on building a model so that the goal is to come back to this group as well as the Long Range Planning Committee to deliver a tool that we can use to say, all right, what's the worst case and best case scenario looking forward over the next 5 years of, with a certain set of assumptions, worst case and best case, what's it going to be doing to our budget? So we can play around with some of those assumptions if we want to. So that's a quick update.
Good, thank you. Anybody have any questions? So that flows right into the next item, which I wanted to talk to this group, and I would like to get us started thinking about the budget cycle early. We often don't give direction till a little bit later, and we had developed tools last year, and essentially one of the tools is to look at reserve positions and what we know about them and roll it forward. Another tool is to look at a long-range capital picture and to understand everything we've already approved, and then building cash flows for everything open, and then look at the 5-year plans and look at an affordability level. And as you know, we did that last year during the budget process and identified a problem that if everything in the 5-year plan came to us, there would be affordability issue if we wanted to stay with our current processes and our current practices, staying within the percentages and everything. So what I'd like to do for next month, and I've included in here the 2 pieces we used last year, and it's just a copy of old stuff, nothing's been updated yet, but it's got the reserve roll forward we looked at and how we approached it, and then it's got a picture of the debt analysis. And for the next meeting, I've started working with Sean. We want to update those for whatever the latest information is we can get from everybody, so we want to put year-end actuals in. Sean identified something to me today, which is very interesting, where we were planning in our roll forward of having favorable budget, favorable tax collection, having an excess of 800,000, and it actually came in closer to 5 this past year. So we'll look at things like that and have a conversation about how we look at this and what we can count on. And then the last piece, which Linda just referred to, Sean and I actually spent a little bit of time talking about it today, and we're going to be meeting with Linda and see if we can get it in a better range. But what we'd like to do is be able to let people look at, if we give 2% to Board of Ed on the operating side, 2% to Board of Ed, 2% to the town, and as you know, we made a decision last year to keep the 7% on the capital side, the debt/capital side. If we do those 3 pieces and we take $1.5 million out of a reserve position, and Sean is also going to look up the mechanics of how we do that, we probably have to create a special reserve and move money over out of general fund over to do the shortfall for the Hartford, because we've identified $1.5 million problem for that. So we can't probably take that out of general fund. It'll look like we're using general fund to balance the budget, which isn't our intention. It was a planning tool, and we put the money aside for that specific purpose. So we'll probably need to set a fund up for that. So he'll come back next month, and we'll have a first step at, let's say we can do that, and we've come up with a mechanism to do that, and we just start at the 2% plus a 7% debt. What does it mean? And we took a quick look at it today, and we're talking about in the range of a 3.5% tax increase. So what we wanted to do with this board is bring that back now, let us look at it, and make some decisions next month about what direction we'd like to give the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen. Because if we're going to ask them, if we wanted to hold to some of our prior year goals, we need to figure out how we're going to find money, or we need to understand what this year is going to look like now, and make sure everybody gets on the same page for what we want. And so, in light of that, I'd like to spend most of next month's meeting having this board really have those tough conversations and decide what direction we'd like to give them. And then I'd also like to propose that we meet in November, the 3-board meeting, and start the conversation early this year. Now, I had asked both the boards during the last budget cycle to give us updated information, at least on the big capital side, before we meet on the 3-board meeting. If you can both bring this back, really the 2 projects that don't fit simultaneously that we already know about are the 2 big ones. So it's the senior center and the junior high. So really, don't worry about anything else. We'd love an updated total number from you, but we can slate that in across the years. We can do some assumptions and fine tune it later. But if you have any new information on those two big projects, those are the ones that we can tell you on the first model. I don't think, even if you just do those and nothing else, they're going to clash in the same years. And so we'll be able to see how much one or both, or they would have to be cut back, and that's some modeling Sean and I will bring to that meeting. But I think that's the really important number. If somebody knows, it could be higher or lower. We just need the best number you have now, so we can put it in the model and people can have a little better understanding of what it says. So that's my plan, and I also included for you, and I thought we could even talk about it a little bit this time if you're up for it. There's a page of what our criteria was last time, and we're going to need to revisit this, and is this still the right goals for this group for the budget planning process? And we changed it and called it criteria because, to be fair, these aren't really goals. They were things that we wanted to see happen, but they weren't truly goals. So again, I don't know if you guys want to comment on them. I know we modified it a little bit last year and added in some collaboration. We added in a new point. And I don't know whether you all still think these are the right ones, but, minimize mill rate increases. We've done that successfully for 3 years by holding taxes flat with no mill rate increase. But there's no question that this year presents a new challenge that we're not going to be able to use reserves to balance anything because we're already doing that just to absorb the Hartford shortfall. So I think we need to look at, is this still the right goals for us? And I don't know if people want to, anybody have any thoughts?
I'm very happy with these. I'm comfortable going forward with them as they are, but I'm open to other suggestions.
If we just back up one step.
Of course.
Are we able to have the projects that are, I felt like last year, I kind of walked in, and there's a bunch of these projects that are up on the table, and not knowing exactly what the detail was behind the projects. I'd like to have an understanding of what the projects are that are proposed for the capital improvement.
If you go back and look at the book that we got last year, there is a description of each one of them, and they won't really be any different. I mean, the rule is they have to be on the list for 5 years.
Like they did it was like $400,000 improvement for safety around Town Hall. That was the description. I still don't know what safety improvements took place around Town Hall that cost $400,000. So that's what I'm.
Was that something in CIP or in the capital plan?
I think it was in CIP.
Okay. So not to mix the two up, this is, the modeling that we're doing is around the capital plan. The CIP plan, we tend to hold fairly flat year after year, and those are items that we really don't see until the budget is presented to us. One of the reasons that we're asking for interboard collaboration is under the charter, we actually don't see the first capital plan or the CIP until like late March. So we don't have much time to act. We're seeing it for the first time, and we've got to get back to them, and we've got to be ready to set a rate. So since that's how it actually operates, I'm trying to shift the model, so we're going to be able to provide direction ahead. I don't think you're going to find people willing to even tell you what the list is, much less, and you're talking CIP, I'm saying the big capital. I'm telling them, at least if you can get us the big projects that we know are a problem, we'll get a start. But Linda's right, under the charter, it has to have been in the prior year, although there can be exceptions for that, but it's supposed to be in the prior year, so we can pretty much assume that it was in somewhere in the last 5 years in the new capital projects that are going to come in for us. But that's not CIP, that's the actual capital one, which is what the model that we're looking at that I handed out is about.
Okay.
Okay?
That makes sense?
Somewhat, yeah. I have to go back in, because you're talking about the Henry James project, and I'm looking at the CIP, and Henry James is in that CIP, so I just need to do a little bit more.
I think you meant to say the CNR for the acronym.
I did.
Acronyms.
I did.
CIP and capital plan are the same
thing. Capital.
Right, and CNR is the small one, so you're looking at the, so.
That's why I was confused.
Sorry. No wonder you said, is it clear? Sorry, I meant CNR for that. So the CIP capital projects, what we have is the book.
Right.
And each group provided what they provide,
Yeah, a
which is a
one-page.
description. So I would suggest if there's something on there, you could actually, talk to, and I would probably go through the our finance director, and ask him to get more information on maybe whichever ones that you've got some questions on that we didn't get answered during last year's process.
Okay.
I'm wondering if it would be possible for the other two boards, I don't know how, we might request this informally, the chair might send a note. It would be nice to have criteria from them of like their salient 5 or 6 criteria for their budget decision-making processes. And I say that in part because I realized from the last meeting that our goals, one of our goals is to promote collaboration amongst the boards, and yet I think that our goals sometimes are not coincident. And so if we're looking to forge common ground, I'd love to see what their criteria are. So for the Board of Education, for example, they may have goals of, I don't know,
Quality education.
Our ranking, right, of being the, Money Magazine top, 50. I mean, I'd like to know what their goals are to get a better sense of where they're headed, because Burke informed me that, most of the cost-saving initiatives fall on him and the folks within his department. It's not really within the prerogative of department chairs and what have you. Their goals are to, the academic mission. So I think it'd be useful. Board of Selectmen as well. It'd be very useful to know what their goals are.
So I'm not sure these are fair goals.
Or criteria.
Right, because I think for goals you will get, quality education as probably the primary goal for the Board of Ed.
Right.
Has the Board of Ed or the Board of Selectmen ever come up with a set of criteria?
We have, I don't think we have formal budget criteria exactly like this format. We have general Board of Ed goals. We have indicators of success, and we have one indicator that is resource-based that relates to budget. And in fact, the Board of Education meeting, I think it's the next meeting, is going to have an update on those goals, so we can certainly kind of take that and give you as close a help as I think you're looking for in terms of what is that lens that helps to guide resource and budget decisions.
I guess I'd say I think it would facilitate discussion to know what's most important or most critical to the other two boards from a kind of a planning perspective, so that when we're looking at it, we can kind of try to achieve win-wins and perhaps, meeting the most critical of the goals, but there may be some where we can't afford to meet those, and some may be cost-benefit analysis, I don't know, but I think it would facilitate discussion to know what's critical for those two boards.
Sure, and on the Board of Selectmen side, the first selectman last year, her budget presentation, I know highlighted something, I actually just pulled it up, 4 key budget objectives, I think she calls them here. And her budget message also was an even more extensive, in-depth, sort of explanation of the goals that she was trying to meet through the budget. But there, some, they certainly overlap. Develop and plan for long-term economic sustainability, responsible stewardship of our natural resources and assets, maintain fiscal responsibility by delivering quality services in the most cost-effective manner. And so those are the goals that at least she laid out at the start of the budget.
Who actually puts the agenda together for the tri-board meeting?
We do, it's our meeting.
It's our meeting, okay. So
Historically, yeah.
I sort of also support Jeff on this. I think that if we're going to, if our goal is collaboration, then as we put that agenda together, we want to have items on that show where we're in agreement and where we might be at odds with each other, and be sure that those things get discussed. And and not spend an hour and a half talking about how great quality education is and
Right,
how
right, right.
great a lower tax rate would be. I mean, those are,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right,
those
right.
are mutually exclusive goals, I'm sure.
yeah.
So what was that called? Was it an objectives or a goals page?
On hers was budget objectives on her
Budget
presentation
objectives.
last year.
And is there a document from last year's plan that would be similar to that on the Board of Ed side we could ask for an update on?
Can't think of something quite that framed, but as I was speaking of, we have our indicator that's tied into our Board of Ed goals that speaks to resources, and I think that would be the most appropriate thing for me to share. I believe it's going to get updated next week and discussed.
Would you be willing to bring our last year's, this one page, which we will get to you, and the one page from the Board of Selectmen to the superintendent and just say, we wanted to have this kind of discussion at the meeting coming up, which we plan on scheduling for November, just to give him plenty of time to think about it and see if, that is
Well,
what he'd like to produce, or?
I think that Burke can do that, but I think if you have metrics that you want to achieve in the budgeting process, those may be much more responsive to Jeff's concerns than bullet points on a PowerPoint slide.
I think it will be of interest to you.
Right.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
we looked at it last year, and we look at it every year, right?
I think you all have been prioritizing the capital improvements anyway, right? We've been doing that the last several, I know we had a meeting, a working group meeting with all the boards, like maybe 3 years ago, where it was dedicated to capital only, if I recall. Maybe it was 4 years ago?
I don't remember that one, so that would.
I'm not sure which one.
It was a while ago, but where we went through and we asked each of the boards to prioritize what's most critical and what's aspirational, what would be nice to have versus what's essential. And I think that would be helpful. I know that's part of the process anyway for capital, but I'd love to see kind of a prioritization list if you had, what are the top 5 things. And, I think, like, for example, the junior high, having an auditorium that would allow all the students to be in one place at one time versus, I guess, in the gym. And so, where does that stack up overall, given all the priorities you guys have? And I thought we did that.
Well, the challenge is they're not required to deliver this to us.
They're not required, but I'm just saying, it's helpful to get a better sense of,
So we don't have
We're
a
gonna have
list,
an
much less a
honest-
prioritized list.
I know, but if we're gonna have an honest conversation with a 3-board meeting, I feel like it would be useful to know, like, are there,
There's in response to your prior comment about the goal of getting things earlier, I know both the town and Board of Ed heard that loud and clear. So at the meeting next week, the Board of Education focus is on the Henry James project, having a conversation about the current status and next steps,
Good.
focusing on those needs to be ready for,
Good.
providing that earlier to other boards and to the public. And clearly, the prioritization of the 6-year CIP, year 1 is the prioritization. And so I think
Right.
that has been clear. And so I think you'll be able to get plenty of time and plenty of data to start chewing on.
And past years, you're right, we have asked them to prioritize the list, but it was after we actually got it.
right.
So
Be
we're
nice to know.
talking March before we're able to say, please give us a prioritized list.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could get that earlier on. To the extent I mean, there's some things that you may not know about, but
Okay. Let me share one more thing too. I had some conversations today with, concerning the fact that we had no tax increases for the last 3 years. And it was suggested that if we just made a 1% tax increase each year, then next year we'd only have to make one more. We wouldn't have to be looking at a 3.5 problem. So I just want to make sure that we're on record, and I think that we all did this with the thought that we had a mill rate that wasn't competitive in the valley, and that we were trying to make Simsbury more attractive place to move into. So our goal was to hold taxes flat, not to manage public perception around, oh, a 1% increase is good, so let's make it every year and put aside that money so that we don't have to, do a tax increase when we really need one. So I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable that, with what we've done, by holding it flat for 3 years, we knew sooner or later we're going to get to the year where we can't do that again. But the fact that it's creating some size of tax increase next year, and we already can look at that and know it, that's just something that this board made sort of a policy decision to do. And I just want to get everybody comfortable with that there's going to have to be some sort of tax increase. And the concept of, well, we could have gotten an extra % the last 3 years, and now we'd only be doing another %, and they'd be used to that, is not the way this board has operated or tried to.
Then they would have been taxed excessively for the last 3 years.
Exactly.
And, I'd rather pay, and I am not expecting we are going to go up 3%, but even if we did, I'd rather pay the 3% once than have paid 1 extra % and then 2 extra % and 3 extra % in past years when we didn't need to. I think we saved taxpayers a bunch of money for 3 years, so.
Right.
And I think we would have been
still
over-reserved.
better.
I think we've been managing our reserves much more closely and closing out funds that needed to be closed out, and still, I know more cleanup that you're working on, but I agree 100%. I think we should try to be as fair as we can be each year with where we are and what we need to maintain those parameters that we've established. I'm also hoping, maybe wishful thinking, but I'm hoping we're going to see an increase this cycle in property values so that our mill rate will become more competitive, because we're looking at what it is, the hold harmless that the governor had promised that probably is going to go away on the car tax revenue. So we're looking at, was 37, right?
Well, it's an
But it's
election
good.
year, so who knows?
Down to maybe 32, and again, we're looking at eating that if we can. So I think the mill rate, I think it's a meaningful measure.
Well, so for the next meeting, Linda and I will kind of put in a set of assumptions. We'll use some of the input we got from the long-range planning group, and that it'll be a model, an iterative model that we can probably adjust right in the meeting and have up on the board so people can get comfortable.
We have access to the model ahead of now?
Hopefully, but
Sean?
if not.
Yeah, assuming it's done, if we're able to meet this week.
We'll meet this
which I'm
week.
hoping we will, then yeah, we can certainly email it out and verify that it's working.
Okay. Anything else on planning? We had a calendar that you handled out, and really the biggest part of this is we've had that tri-board meeting in December, and some of the reasons in the past, and some of the reasons that we've done that is there may be a new board on. We didn't necessarily want to do that meeting before we had new members of a board if it was an election year. But I'm suggesting the sooner we start this year, it'll give them more time to get back to
I
us.
totally support that.
So is everybody okay with setting a, of course, we picked our night to invite them, so let's hope it works. But everybody okay with that?
I'm okay with the concept. I unfortunately cannot be here that night, but that's all right.
The 15th? I just have to double check my schedule.
Well, we need, these are some of the most important meetings, so we need to figure out, is that the right night to do it then?
I think the less we deviate from our standard third Tuesday of the month, the more likelihood that you'll get us all to show up. We all know that, and sometimes you have business conflicts that you can't.
I'll be here the 15th.
Yeah, that you can't avoid,
Okay.
or travel conflicts, but.
Okay.
I had just one other question when you're done with it.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions? This isn't a final, it's just sort of the preliminary budget. It's moved up just a bit because of Passover. They had to adjust the schedule and get in meetings a little bit earlier.
There's some 2016 dates on here that I think are meant to be 2017.
Oh,
Yes, there are.
thank you for noting that. I will fix that.
Yeah,
and just-
four of them.
You're correct. There are, and as Barb was just saying, our charter, as you know, your first budget hearing has to be no later than April 10th, as it says right in the charter. This year, that happens to be the Monday that Passover starts, and so we don't have meetings that night. So the earliest, it does move you up. We don't want to have a Friday night meeting. We typically would not have a Friday night meeting. We'd have a Thursday night would be the early, or the latest we could have our first public hearing. So that's why you see April 6th as the proposed there.
Okay.
And because that kind of created a tight window, the budget must be published by Saturday, April 1st. The original plan, and I think what we did last year, the charter says that the first selectman and board of selectmen must present it to you by March 31st. That's really just the way the calendar is this year. Too tight. The first selectman's willing to move her presentation up, which normally would have been March 28th. So that's a tentative March 21st. You wanted me to make sure I point out. If for some reason there's delays on the selectmen's side, we might have to slide that to the 28th, but that would be such a tight turnaround getting it into the newspaper that's really just tough. But these are sort of the dates that we're left with in the charter. So
Well, hopefully we won't have to actually do this newspaper thing this time around, right?
that is true. And so that, if a plug there for that, that actually does make publishing it a lot easier because they need about 2 or 3 days of lead time
Right.
to reserve that whole page. So
It's ridiculous.
I am cautiously optimistic on that. So, but that's why you see that March 21st really is sort of a tentative until we sort of, it's obviously only September now, we're still trying to plan this out, but wanted to get these dates out there.
So
2017.
we don't have a meeting to talk about the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education budget? Unless we do it at the same meeting they present it?
Well, let's see, historically.
That's why the calendar's so tight.
Well, if now that we're settling on the third Tuesday, the third Tuesday as your regular meeting is the 21st, the night that the first selectman will be presenting. So you could certainly have a follow-up meeting to that, or on the 28th for discussion purposes.
Well, we're going to get the budget, be able to ask questions, but not have time as a group to talk about, is there pushback, is there anything we want to do?
I think we need to-
Right.
And there isn't a meeting set in here that gives us any time to have that conversation. So do we want to set a special meeting to do that? Well, it won't be special if we set it
I
up
think we
now.
have done
Set
that in years past, right? Haven't
It's
we had an
been,
extra
the
meeting?
way it was, at least the years I've experienced, the last couple of years, as I recall, the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday were sort of the Board of Ed's night and the Board of Selectmen's night, because the Board of Ed must present by March 15th, and we were March 31st.
And our meeting was the
And yours
third.
was the third, so it
So
kind
we
of
had a
created a
chance to
third in
do
the
it.
middle. Although again, historically, once the Board of Selectmen present, who also present capital, it's been as late as March 30th or 31st. Because of that charter requirement by April 10th, often what has happened is just move the budgets as presented to hearing, and then allow discussion either after the first hearing or after the second hearing or in between. I did put school vacation week here because,
But there isn't even a meeting in for that. So between the first and second hearing, there's no place
and you
for
could certainly
discussion.
have, that's up, right, we can add that as a regular meeting. The sensitivity to that is just, we've run into this school vacation issue, and we do have scheduling challenges during that week. That's why I added a second hearing. The charter says you should have at least one. Obviously, last year we had 3 intentionally. But these are all very, drought. I put down sort of the bare minimum, and you guys can add as much as you want to it.
So I was thinking we could even think about adding a special meeting if we had to that week of, if people could make it, Tuesday, the 21st, maybe Thursday. I don't know. It's not a special meeting, you're right, if we put it in here.
Right.
But
I'd hope we could try to stick to Tuesdays, because,
I'm just thinking of adding a second meeting
So
that week.
the following
if we
Tuesday
had
is
to.
March 28th, right?
just because Tuesdays are sort of blocked out for.
Oh, good point, I understand. And I guess even if the board.
So does March 28th work for people?
Works, for me.
Nothing planned, right?
That's a Tuesday, the following week, and that point, we'll have both of their budgets, and we won't have, we can decide at that what we want to put forward to the public hearing, or whether we want to go back and push back.
Sorry, just logistically, how, you have to have your first hearing by
April 6th.
We're talking about meeting March 28th.
Okay, no, I just thought I heard you say push back and ask for more. I'm making sure there's time between March 31st, and because we have to notice it for 5 days legally.
So what you're saying is we have no choice but to move their budgets as presented to us. We can't change them, we can't tell them to adjust it.
Unless, this is just the way the charter's written, I mean, unless they present their budgets, the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen, earlier than required, the answer is essentially no. I mean,
But we can still meet on the 28th.
Sure.
If we don't like what they've presented, we can still have a hearing on it, and we can say at that hearing, we're not really happy with that.
Right.
They've got some time between the 28th and the 6th to make some adjustments and even present those adjustments
This is
if they want,
essentially
but-
what we did last year.
Yeah.
Right. You could have, are you saying have your hearing on the 28th, March 28th?
No, April 6th, as you've proposed.
Okay.
So we're adding a meeting to your schedule.
March
On the
28th.
28th.
So Sean, you give us a comprehensive list of these meetings and our regularly scheduled ones for October,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Right.
at the October meeting.
Okay.
That was, really why we brought it up today, because sometimes we've waited till November to talk about this, and then it's always been a little bit of a scramble. So
Right.
we're actually, believe it or not, a little ahead of the game on scheduling, but it's good feedback to add to the list.
Okay, anybody have anything else for tonight?
I just had a question for, if we could have Burke, not to get you off guard. Because I was thinking before when I asked about whether you could absorb, and you said, no, we had 3 new certified staff, so I had 2 questions, really. One was whether we're about 70 student difference, and they were concentrated in, unfortunately, just certain grades, certain schools. Is that unusual? Because I know when we shed students, we have fewer students, often we can't, if we have 70 fewer students, we usually can't say, okay, we need 3 fewer teachers, because they're spread throughout. I'm just wondering, is this kind of an anomaly to have to add 3 staff
It
for
is definitely
70?
unusual, but it's not about, it's about where the class size guidelines were, and they're monitoring it weekly throughout the summer. And you see the most move-ins and you see the most move-outs over the summer. So where those particular classrooms are, once we went above class size guideline, that's where the impact was. So that might only be, 6 to 8 kids if you were right on the edge when you started. So it's really not something that I'm going to be able to answer tonight. It's really something as a part of the enrollment report. Which I think you're going to need to. You're going to need to be able to. That's one of your customary questions, I know, throughout the budget process. But we haven't had. It is an anomaly in recent years to suddenly have those spikes.
And it is there.
Squadron line was by far the most. We almost had. I think we started with 3. We ended up with 4, and we were concerned we were going to have almost go to 5 in one grade. I mean, it was very, very unique.
Thanks, Mike. And then the other question is, are you comfortable that you'll be able to absorb in your budget the 3 positions in your current budget?
I am, and I am in part because of our timing at the beginning of the fiscal year. You have the most time the school year to plan, and we also obviously have the non-lapsing account, which is a factor for us that fortunately we do have. So.
Okay, great.
Not till next month.
That's right. It is not official, but some of that money you've moved forward. So.
And when you come with the request for that next month, you'll also come with how you would like permission to use it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I had a question under other items, and that is, are we not going to do the policy stuff that we sort of set for ourselves as a task?
So Jeff had told me there was a chance he needed to leave early tonight, and it was his policy, and we had some conversations around some homework that needed to be done outside of here. Jeff and I did, so that was my decision not to put it back on tonight, but yes, we were
So
planning
maybe
that.
next month we'll do that?
Well, it depends on how much time you guys want to talk about the budget. I don't know. What do you think?
Next time?
Yeah.
I think we probably should knock one of these off
Yeah.
soon.
Okay.
We've been talking about this since we started, so we should get one done, and we should assign the next one to be in the queue.
So,
As long as it's not mine, I'm all for it.
So why don't you and I talk about
Yeah.
the changes to the CNR?
if people have any changes they'd like to see, if they could, I think you have the Word document, send those over, and
Haven't you
then,
got that from all of us?
I got your markup.
And Rob did his, or?
Yeah, but I didn't send it to anybody because the changes that I had hand-marked were all made by Jeff. So, but I also looked for it again in anticipation's meeting. I couldn't find it in my email box, so wherever you are, what.
So maybe Bob and I will then just corral and try to
So
Send out so
Revise
your
Your update, and then we can
your
review
update,
it.
and then
Okay.
I know I was fine with what you've done so far, except for the broader picture,
Yeah, I
broader
mean, there's
question
a
of
bunch of questions we need to discuss.
why do we do it this way in the first place? But so that is a bigger conversation. It's not.
And is that the conversation we're going to have at the
Yeah.
next meeting, along with making decisions on the budget?
Well, from my perspective, I would only want to just raise it. I don't think we can decide it or even really discuss it. But I'm aware of the historical reason. We talked about it briefly. But I don't want to make that a 45-minute discussion.
maybe November, the
The November meeting's a joint meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too much.
that is too much.
Christmas Eve.
I mean, we're not,
Warn the inland wetlands people that they're going to be going to the Board of Ed conference
Sooner
room.
than later.
and it is one of the tougher ones to update, I
Well,
think.
I actually think it might be one of the toughest ones to
Which one,
update. So it was-
CNR?
Yes,
Yeah.
which is why it was hard to start with it.
Right,
And there's a lot of philosophical things that I think
yeah.
we need to have some conversations about what it is, which is why bringing it to the meeting today, I didn't think we'd really get anything done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the other question is, do you try to set up a sort of special meeting just on policy?
Yeah.
Not that any of us wants more meetings, but that's an option too.
Yeah, let me throw, it might be efficient to adopt the wording changes that Jeff has suggested, based on what I read the first time, because the policy itself is just wrong in a couple of places, and you've updated that. And
But he
so-
also has a whole bunch of questions. I
Yeah.
mean, he doesn't have proposals in every place. In many places, it's, do we need this, and why is this here? And
And to tell you the
Is it
truth,
accurate?
it's not quite clear we're following it. I don't think that policy is written to show what we're currently doing. So Jeff and I had the conversation around, should the policy reflect what we're currently doing?
I'm sorry, I forgot about that, yeah.
So that's a big change if we want to change it to reflect what we're really doing and what the current intent is.
So maybe we should target the December 20th meeting and do
That'd be
the
good.
policy there, and see if we can't have one other substantive one to discuss, because we'll be before the budget season, we'll be after the
Right.
the tri-meeting. That's probably our only chance, because then once we get into January and February,
Well, January is
maybe
still a
we
little
can do
early.
A little bit next month, just answering, discussing some of the questions that you raised in your notes.
I say December sounds good, only because I've really crunched. I've crunched at work the next month, but
why don't we put it on the agenda for next week, next meeting to discuss, so that we have a clear plan for our December 20th meeting? And that will allow us to maybe ask some of the questions, Linda, or put them on there, so that we can be prepared and productive for the December meeting. If we were to pick one other to do, which would be the next logical one? Or do you want to just try to get this one done?
I'd focus on one at a
All
time.
right, fine.
we updated reserves like 2 years ago.
But there are-
This is the hardest one because of a philosophical conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other quick thing, I just want to make note that I will be away for the next meeting, camping somewhere, and I will try to call in. I promise I will practice using my mute button
Well,
more effectively.
Since you're going to offer to do that, I guess I would like to see us actually have a policy which says that to the extent we have a quorum, that we try not to do that. I think it is counterproductive, my personal opinion, not to deprive you of the right to participate, but the idea of having telephonic, I mean, that's controversial at 7:10, 7:12, but it was more than uncomfortable, especially the one hearing that we had, public hearing.
Yeah, and
dropping
I
out.
apologize, I screwed up on my mute button.
Well, it happened with Barbara too, and it's, I mean, it's just, it's not a function of the person's participation, it's just the format is because talking over and raising questions. I mean, prior to this, prior to our approving the policy that allowed telephone, which was one of the first meetings that when Kevin and I were here, there was no participation by telephone. Is that correct?
No.
And so,
It was never
raised.
banned previously, it just was, people
Not
didn't
used.
bother to
Not
call
used.
in.
I wish we had like a Skype.
It certainly would be better if we had a better
Capability
quality phone, for sure.
Yeah.
But
We don't have Skyping capability, huh, or that?
well, go back to my preface, preamble on this, to the extent that we otherwise have a quorum.
I could agree with that.
I don't feel strongly, and
you guys aren't the ones that travel regularly, Barb and I are.
yeah, no, I know, and I mean,
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing you on
Well, that's not
TV.
true. I've missed my
phone.
meetings too, but when you miss a meeting, you miss a meeting, and then you make it up by
watching the
watching the
film.
tape and being informed, and that's why we have 6 members, and we need a 4 for a quorum. I mean, that's,
I wish we had better technology, because I feel like it
all right,
ought to
so
be.
I'm not
it ought
making
to
a
be
motion.
Manageable. I feel like it ought to be
I'm
manageable.
not making a motion, I'm raising the topic.
Is there a way to?
Well, can I
do
propose
the
that we
Skyping?
see how the next month goes with me on the
Check
phone,
IT, but-
behaving better?
Like you don't have a smartphone yet, huh?
But what difference does that make? It
Because
still
then,
has a
because
mute
then
button.
you
do
could,
it
no,
on
but
your
then you
phone.
could do like FaceTime, you know, so we could see you and you could see us.
What makes you think I want to be seen?
But
It's a campground looking like a wild woman.
But then you know if somebody's talking. I mean, I just wish we had better technology. I don't know. I'm surprised we don't.
And I can't even guarantee that I'll be in a place with cell phone coverage, so I may not be able to call in.
That's
But
true.
So our policy allows it, so I suggest that we try it one more time. I just think that, I've said my piece.
Okay.
It could be traumatic if you get attacked by a bear out
I do.
there. And
Are there any other new items for this evening? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Jeff Lumenthal, motion to adjourn.
Krell, seconds.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
We're adjourned.